Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 2022 Women at the Center kickoff. I'm Tiziana Deering, host of WBUR's Radio Boston. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Throughout this evening's program, we will celebrate our collective commitment to women's and girls' mental health. We'll reflect on the mental health crisis we're experiencing both nationally and regionally, and we will hear stories of resilience and reinvention. This year's kickoff was to feature Emmy Award winner and New York Times bestselling author of Between Two Kingdoms, Suleika Jawad. As you know, she has had recent health complications. She's unable to join us. Many of you were already admirers of Suleika's. More of you have come to admire her work in connection with this event. Her writing about the in-betweens places is remarkable. She teaches and inspires through the example of her life. And I know that I speak for all of us when I send Suleika heartfelt wishes for a safe return to the kingdom of wellness. The theme of tonight's program is life's interruptions as a springboard for transformation. And that's all about accepting the plot twists in our lives, seeing them not as obstacles that we need to overcome, but starting places for something different and something beautiful. And in keeping with that theme, we are grateful that Elizabeth Gilbert has volunteered to fill in tonight for her dear friend, Suleika. Elizabeth is, of course, well known as a best-selling author, a novelist, a memoirist. Her memoir, Eat, Pray, Love, exploded on the scene in 2006, quickly becoming a #1 bestseller, and then later a film starring Julia Roberts and Javier Bardem. These days, Elizabeth Gilbert focuses her writing on leading a life that is guided by creativity rather than being guided by fear. Thank you, Elizabeth. We want to thank you for joining us tonight. And now to share a few opening remarks, please welcome Dana Lazowski, Chair of Women at the Center.
Thank you, Tiziana. Given all we lived through the past 2 years, life's interruption as a springboard for transformation seemed like the perfect theme for our 2022 Women at the Center kickoff. Little did we know how much practice we would get navigating change as we planned tonight's event. When we began talking about the kickoff last summer, fully in person seemed like a definite possibility, and we relished the idea of bringing our community back together at last. By Labor Day, Delta had squashed that plan, and we leaned into a hybrid model. But Omicron's appearance in November made it clear that even a hybrid would not be possible. We set out to make this the best, and hopefully last, virtual Women at the Center kickoff. We are so glad you are here tonight to share it with us. Each year, Women at the Center kickoff is an opportunity for women and other members of our community to connect through a shared commitment to mental health, to connect in our understanding that we are all affected by mental health challenges, both directly and indirectly, and perhaps most importantly, to connect over the simple truth that our impact is greater when we join together with purpose. Women at the Center is the women's philanthropic arm of the Brookline Center. For almost a decade, we've been building a community of women, raising awareness of women and girls' mental health, and growing the support needed to transform lives. I have the great honor to be the chair of the Women at the Center Committee and the privilege of working alongside an incredible group of women, passionate and dedicated to the Brookline Center's mission of mental health for all. I thank each of them for their friendship, leadership, and commitment. Like last year, hundreds of people from across the country are joining us tonight, redefining and expanding our Women at the Center community. In the face of a nationwide mental health crisis, this growing support has never been more important or more deeply appreciated. Thank you to our sponsors, both individuals and companies, who through their generous financial support are helping the Brookline Center expand programs and services for women and girls, and by lending their name to our effort, are helping to eliminate the stigma attached to mental health conditions. The outstanding care provided at the center by our amazing and dedicated clinicians has been an anchor for our community during a turbulent time. For existing clients, our clinicians and staff provided stability and consistency. And for our newer clients, the center was a vital source of hope and healing. It is our wish that tonight's program will leave you eager to deepen your connection to our mission and to our community, and that you will feel inspired to continue to support the center, ensuring that we can provide and expand access to care to women and girls in our community and beyond. Thank you again for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Dana. The last 2 years have challenged us all in individual ways, and they've put a spotlight on the deep challenges in the field of mental health. Increased needs, staffing shortages, practitioner burnout, and structural failings that have left people, particularly the most vulnerable among us, underserved. Community mental health centers like the Brookline Center, which exist to serve people with low income and other traditionally marginalized communities, as well as all those in need, are key service providers. And we've reported more than once here on Radio Boston that all mental health providers, all service providers are experiencing these same structural and practical issues. For example, how this convergence of extraordinary need and workforce shortages means less outpatient access and more people forced to turn to the emergency room for care. For more about Brookline Center's own experiences, here is Fumi Agucha, Chief Operating Officer.
Thank you, Tiziana, and greetings to all. I'm excited to join you at my first Women at the Center kickoff and honored to represent Brookline Center CEO Ian Lang and our entire senior leadership team here this evening. At the Brookline Center, we are on the front line of a national mental health crisis that was growing long before COVID came along. Prior to the pandemic, the rate of depression and anxiety was steadily climbing. But the experiences of the last 2 years has driven many Americans to a breaking point. Every day we see firsthand the toll that the last 2 years has taken on all of us, but particularly on the most vulnerable members of our community. For our clinicians and clients of color, we experience daily the deep social problems that the pandemic has exposed. But we have also witnessed the incredible resiliency, flexibility, creativity in the face of these challenges. Brookline Center staff and clinicians have demonstrated enormous dedication and skills, and we have seen the incredible support of our work. All of this gives us confidence that with your partnership, the Brookline Center will continue to meet the evolving mental health needs of our community with compassion, innovation at the forefront. Tonight, our focus is on women and girls' mental health, and our collective action and attention have never been more important. Girls have disproportionately experienced greatest impact of the past 2 years, and the statistics is dire. Despite an overall decline in emergency room visits for adolescents and drop in mental health-related ER visits for teenage boys, in 2020 and 2021, visits to the ER for girls increased by 51%. For girls with eating disorders, visit doubled. For girls with tic disorders, visit tripled. ER visits for girls experiencing depression, anxiety, and OCD also increased. This January, the CDC reported another increase in ER visits for teenage girls dealing with anxiety, trauma, and stress-related issues. Hospital admission for teenage girls who have attempted suicide have increased by 50% nationwide. Black girls are 2 times more likely to die of suicide compared to their white peers. We must do something for our girls. The Brookline Center has long understood that early identification and expanded evidence-based intervention are critical in improving girls' mental health, and broader access to care is key in keeping girls safe. Thousands of girls have received care at the center, and with your help, We'll continue to be here for the girls who need care now and for those who need care in the coming years. Last week, President Biden unveiled a national mental health strategy that aimed to transform how mental health conditions are understood, perceived, accessed, treated, and integrated. We are proud that Community Mental Health Center, like the Brookline Center, are a key part of President's plan. With your support and presence tonight, you become a part of an historic effort. On behalf of all of us at the Brookline Center, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Fumi. And now for the first time in Women at the Center Kickoff history, our program tonight includes a musical performance. Please welcome singer, songwriter, and Brookline Center clinician, Katie Curtis Hunter, performing her song, Passing Through.
Hi, my name is Katie Curtis Hunter. I'm an outpatient clinician at the Brookline Center, and I am also a folk singer. I'm going to play a song I wrote with Mark Orelli, and it's in the theme of this 2022 kickoff for Women at the Center, the theme of connection and resilience. This is called Passing Through. We are passing this world on to our kids. From the day when they climb from their cribs, we'll try to teach them well, show them that there's love, but in the end all we can do is hope our best was good enough. 'Cause they'll witness how this life can be so beautiful and cruel. We can't shelter them forever, but if we show them all the tools, they might leave this world in a little better shape than me and you. We are only passing through, passing through, passing through. We are only passing through, passing through, passing through. Only passing through. We are watching this world from our living rooms. More than 40 years since we walked on the moon. Well, this big blue ball is shrinking. I don't know if that's good, but for better or for worse, now this whole world is our neighborhood. And there is no place left to run to stay above the fray. We better learn to get along and not just to get our way. Not only for each other, but our children's children too. We are only passing through, passing through, passing through. Only passing through, passing through, passing through. We are only passing through. And I wonder sometimes, what will I pass on? How much can one voice do with just a song? Sometimes injustice and indifference are all that we see, but I refuse to let my hope become the latest casualty. So I'll sing of love and truth and try to practice what I preach. If I can't change the world, I'll change the world within my reach. What better place to start than here and now with me and you? We are only passing through, passing through, passing through. We are only passing through, passing through, passing through. We are
Thank you, Katie, for sharing your music with us. Now, as a public radio host, I value stories so deeply. Our stories are among the most intimate things about us, the things most personal to us. They are the most real way of understanding a problem, understanding its solutions. And when someone has the courage and the generosity to share their story, that really is an act of giving. Maciel Gonzalez is here to share her story of connecting with the Brookline Center during a difficult time in her family's life. Here's Maciel.
When you have been holding your breath for so long and can finally take a deep breath and release it all, that's what the Brookline Center has been for me. 6 years ago, I moved to Brookline to escape domestic violence and get my 4 children to safety. I was relieved to get a place at the Brookline Housing Authority just after setting up a new home. I discovered I was pregnant. All I could think was, now what? Looking back, it's hard for me to remember much at the time. I was barely putting one foot in front of the other. My only focus was my children and helping them transition to life in a new community. When I was 6 months pregnant, my baby was diagnosed with hydronephrosis, a kidney disease. Visits to the hospital became weekly so that the baby's condition could be watched. The stress just kept piling on. That winter, my children enrolled in Brookline schools where they were connected to the Brookline Center. Soon after, one of my children began therapy. At this point, I was really struggling. I had a newborn, I was overwhelmed, and I had no one I could talk to. I would sit in the park and just try to breathe. I was trying to keep it all together. But on the inside, I was crying all the time. And on the outside, I was arguing nonstop with my kids. I felt like my home was falling apart. I felt like my family was falling apart. Everything was just falling and falling and falling. And I didn't know what to do. And then the Brookline Center suggested in-home family therapy. I think it's important for people to understand that when I was growing up, there was a stigma around mental health and therapy. You were looked down on if you needed help. I had been told my whole life that therapy was for crazy people, but I knew I needed help and I knew I needed support. And in-home therapy provided both. Every week, we would all sit around the table, share what was bothering us, and talk about how we felt. I could speak without feeling judged and in a safe place. Together, we started to heal. I was beginning to put my family back together. As in-home therapy was healing my family emotionally, the Brookline Center supported me in other ways. I started individual therapy, and I was assigned a case manager. My case manager, Jay, was someone I could turn to with anything. Like when one of my children had a problem with wetting the bed, I tried everything to protect the mattress, but the bed was ruined. All the time I couldn't afford a new bed. I felt so defeated. When I mentioned the situation to Jay, they connected me to the Care Connections Emergency Assistance Program. Through the program, I was able to get a new bed and mattress, delivered and installed the next week. It's difficult to put into words what that was like. To some, this may seem like a small thing, but to me, it was everything. When I told my child they were getting a new bed, they danced up and down. I can still remember their smile that day. Claire, my current case manager, has become such an important support in my life. She's someone I can always rely on and has been with me through so much. She checks up on me, asks me if I've made that doctor's appointments I've been meaning to, or if I remember to fill that prescription. I'm a mom of 5 kids. It's hard to take time for myself. To have someone looking out for me, it's really special. As a young single mother for so long, I believed I wasn't entitled to complain. When I came to the Brookline Center, I believed I had no right to question the things that happened to me. I couldn't use my voice to advocate for myself. I just had to accept that this was the way things were. You get all of that in your head, and it affects everything in your life. But it's amazing who you can become when you are supported. At the Brookline Center, every person I met saw something in me that I couldn't see myself. They would tell me that I was strong and that they believed in me. And I would say, really? You do? As I surrounded myself with the positivity of the center and built relationships with the incredible people who work there, I started questioning why everyone sees something in me that I can't see. Why can I see it? But I needed to look within to do the work, and finally, I started to believe in myself. The Brookline Center helped me find my confidence and helped me find my voice. Now I know that I can question things. I know how to advocate for myself and for my family. One day, I hope to use my voice to advocate for others in situations like mine. Sharing my story here with you tonight is the first step. Most importantly, I know what I want, I know what I deserve, and I know who I can be. I have finally realized my worth as a person. I can see the things everyone else could see. I believe things happen for a reason, and I believe you end up where you are meant to be. I know that my family and I were supposed to find the Brookline Center, and I'm so grateful that we did.
Maciel, thank you. That was a gift. Please welcome now Jody Sokoloff of the Women at the Center Leadership Committee.
Thank you, Tiziana. Maciel, thank you for sharing your story with us. The challenges of being a mom, trying to hold everything together for your kids, and having little time to take care of your own needs is a story that resonates deeply for me and for sure many others here tonight. And what you have managed to do in the face of these challenges is beautiful and inspiring. Friends, thank you for joining us. Maciel's journey of resilience and reinvention is a powerful reminder of what great mental health care looks like. It also reminds us that stigma still surrounds mental health, making it harder for people to reach out for help. Most of all, Maciel's story spotlights the far-reaching impacts of community mental health, an approach that supports the whole person, a whole family even, and uniquely addresses the social determinants of well-being. This is not care you can find just anywhere, and the Brookline Center for Community Mental Health relies on donor support to make it possible. Almost 10 years ago, we created the Edna Stein Leadership Giving Society to honor the Brookline Center's founder, who knew that her community would be stronger and healthier with better access to mental health care. Members of the Edna Stein Society sustain her vision and provide us with critical resources to expand on it. So now, I am asking for your help. Be a part of our work. Help us expand Brookline Center services so that all women and girls, like Maciel, can find the support and care that they need. If you are able, join me tonight as a member of the Edna Stein Society with a gift or pledge of $1,000 or more, or by signing up for a monthly contribution of $100. Your generosity will open our doors even wider. If you became an Edna Stein Society member at last year's kickoff, thank you. Tonight is the perfect time to renew your support. If you are here as a guest of a sponsor or friend, this is your opportunity to honor their commitment to mental health by deepening your own. Shared action leads to greater impact. And that is what tonight is all about. You can make a gift right now by clicking the donate button. You can also click the pledge button and submit a pledge that can be fulfilled later with a check, a gift of securities, or a contribution from a donor advised fund. I'm going to pause here to give you a moment to fill things out. Every gift made tonight, no matter what size, is needed and deeply appreciated. We are all with Edna. We are all carrying forward her vision so that every woman and girl in our community can access care today and in the days ahead. Thank you for your generous support and for being part of our Women at the Center family. And now, enjoy the rest of the program.
In her critically acclaimed novels and popular works of nonfiction, Elizabeth Gilbert seeks to expand our understanding of creativity, spirituality, and love. I've already mentioned the success of Eat, Pray, Love, which has led her to being a sought-out guide on leading life with authenticity. With over 20 million views, her TED Talk on creativity is one of the top 25 most popular of all time. In her book, Big Magic, Creative Living Beyond Fear, another #1 New York Times bestseller, Elizabeth Gilbert delves into the mysteries of curiosity and inspiration. And so important for tonight, Elizabeth Gilbert is the cherished friend of Suleika Jawad. After some introductory remarks, Elizabeth and I will be having a fireside chat live, so make sure to stick around all the way to the end. And now, Elizabeth Gilbert.
I'm muted and I'm sideways. Is that not what we've all been for the last few years? Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for welcoming me, for allowing me to be part of this. Thank you, Tiziana. I'm so incredibly moved to be here tonight. I'm here in the stead of my beloved friend, Suleika Jawad, the author of the book Between Two Kingdoms, about surviving cancer in her 20s, a cancer that has now returned in her 30s. And she's not well, and so I'm standing in her place. This is adaptive living. This is what it means to be in life on earth at this moment. We make plans, and then the world changes, the ground falls out beneath our feet. I don't have to tell anybody who's listening to this how uncertain the world can feel, even if you haven't been affected directly by the massive, sweeping, shattering changes in the world in the last 2 years, and I can't imagine anybody who hasn't been. I don't have to know any one of you intimately or in detail to know that all of you are going through things, things that are incredibly painful, incredibly difficult, incredibly challenging. I wrote a memoir called Eat, Pray, Love. It is my feeling that most people, certainly most women by the age of 30, at the very latest, could all write a memoir with exactly the same title. And the title of that book would be Not Exactly What I Had Planned. Right? And as you get older, you'll find that that happens only more. Not exactly what I had planned. And at this moment in history, it appears that planning is almost impossible because we just don't know what's going to happen the next day. I have had a conversation recently with a young woman who's my goddaughter, a dear child of friends of mine who is 16, and she is right in that demographic that was mentioned earlier this evening about these girls who are facing such extreme anxiety, depression, OCD, PTSD. And she was having a really difficult moment, and she came to me and she started asking me questions that began with the question, why? Why is this happening? Why am I 16 years old and I've lost the last 2 years of my life to COVID? Why am I young at a time of such such destructive climate change? Why is my country so politically riven? Why is my family having these problems? And, you know, I felt the burden of how do you explain the world to a young person when their world is so objectively difficult? And what I said to her was, one thing that I have learned as I've gotten older in life is that anytime I ask questions out into the void, out into the universe, that begin with the question, why, I can't get anywhere with it. I have a friend, she and I joke that any question beginning with why is a portal that takes you right to hell because you just spin in this unanswerable universe where you can't know. I can't tell my beloved goddaughter why her grandfather died and why she didn't get to see him because of COVID. I can't tell her why she's missed out on high school, why so many of her friends are in such distress. I don't have the answers. Nobody does. But what I told her was that I've learned over time to rephrase all questions that begin with why into questions that begin with how and who. And let me break that down a little bit more by what I mean by that. How is, how do I want to respond to this? How am I going to live in the world as it is? How am I going to adapt to accepting life on life's terms? How am I going to practice self-care when everything is so uncertain? How am I going to find out what my priorities and boundaries are so that I don't end up being eaten up by everybody in pursuit of their happiness rather than my own? How do I want to show up in this moment? And the other question is who? Who can I help? Who can I serve? How can I take my why questions? Why is this so unfair? Why is this so painful? And expand it into identification with my neighbors, with people who I don't know, with strangers across the world, to ask who else is suffering like this, who might need support or love. Who can I show up for? Who can I be a friend to? Who can I reach out of myself into? And when I turn my why questions into how and who, then suddenly I find movement again within myself. My how questions become philosophical. How am I going to find what Masio was talking about looking within? How am I going to find that peace within in an increasingly unsteady world? That becomes a very creative challenge. And when I get a creative challenge, then I'm back in the realm of life again. And when it comes to who can I help? Who can I serve? Who can I show up for? Who can I cancel my plans so that I can be there for somebody else? Then my heart opens and I'm not as alone anymore. So I just wanted to start by sharing that. And this has been a night of storytelling. So I want to share a story about, I realized a long time ago, and the last few years have made it only more pressingly obvious, that contentment, peace, and serenity are inside jobs. If I'm going to need the world to be peaceful, fair, kind, and reasonable before I find inner peace, I'm going to be waiting, it appears, for a very long time. And how long am I willing to wait before the world changes, before I actually make changes within myself that make it possible for me to show up for my life despite what is happening in the outside world? That's the biggest how question, a question that I live into every single day of my life, a question that we all live in. How am I going to do this? And the inside work is the most interesting work that there could possibly be. I want to tell a story about what it's like, what it would be like, and imagine this because it's a big reach, to go through the world relaxed, no matter what was happening in the external world. That is a word, relaxed, that we don't hear very much. And especially when we talk about women's lives and we talk about the kind of women that we want to be and the kind of women that we want to see, the kind of women that we want to vote for, the kind of women who we want to see empowered. There's a series of adjectives that we often use to describe women like that. And it's badass and fierce and strong and tough, or even vulnerable and kind, compassionate, hardworking, dedicated, fierce. These are all really beautiful words, but they don't feel revolutionary to me because every woman that I know is all of those words and has had to be fierce, has had to be badass, has had to be strong, has had to be resilient, has had to be vulnerable. It's almost not even a choice. To me, what's revolutionary is encountering a woman who's relaxed. How many of them do you know? How many have you met? I haven't met very many. I've met a lot of fierce women. I've met a lot of strong women. I've met a lot of resilient women. I haven't met very many who are relaxed. This is a fascinating thing to me, and it's a question I've been living into over the last maybe 10, 15 years. How can I be one? Because if you encountered a woman who was relaxed in every scenario, wouldn't you want to follow her? Wouldn't you want to know how she's doing it? And I'll give you a hint. It doesn't have to do with like going and getting massages. It's a deep internal work. And And you may say, how in the world could I possibly be relaxed? And then list to me the 50 reasons, and many of which are headlines and the other ones are happening in your personal life that make it impossible. But I don't know, I'm too optimistic for that. And I'm too fascinated to accept that for myself anyway. And I'm too curious about what it would be like to become one of the few women I've ever met in the world who are relaxed. I don't know very many relaxed humans, period, but my role model for what it would be like to be absolutely relaxed was a guy named Richard from Texas, who was a mentor of mine. Some of you might remember him if you read my book, if you read Eat, Pray, Love, or if you saw the film. He was played by Richard Jenkins in the film. And he was this big guy from Texas who I met when I was in India at an ashram, getting over a very serious depression and period of suicidal anxiety that I had been in after a divorce and a mental breakdown in my late 20s. And I had gone all the way to India to try to learn how to be at peace. And I met this guy, Richard, and he was the single most relaxed human being I've ever met in my entire life. And he had this posture in the world of being at ease, no matter what was going on. I kind of one hand in the pocket, sort of slouched, and whenever you asked him how he was doing, he always had the same answer. And that answer was, it's all going to be all right. It's all going to be all right. When people would say, strangers on the street would say, hey, how you doing? He'd say, it's all going to be all right. And you would see people just relax with that thought. And you'd see their faces look at you like, really? I hope so. How is it all going to be all right? And I was so impressed with his stillness and his comfort in himself that I really kind of became his student. And the thing about Richard is that nothing in his life ever really had been all right. He had been born in an alcoholic, blue-collar family with a tremendous amount of violence, a tremendous amount of substance abuse. He was an alcoholic by the time he was a teenager. He was sent to Vietnam when he was 17. Whatever sanity he had prior to that was driven out of him by the horrors and the violence that he witnessed there. He came back with severe PTSD, became a heroin addict, a cocaine addict, lost one relationship after another, ended up in jail multiple times, lost contact with his children. I mean, nothing had ever been all right. But what had happened is that he had gotten to such a rock bottom place in himself that he reached that threshold, and many of you know this threshold and have been there in your lives, of really being on the edge of not being able to be here anymore. And in that moment of rock bottom, and this was due to substance abuse in his life, there was a reckoning. And the reckoning was, am I going to stay here and live on Earth's terms? Or am I going to continue to fight against reality? Or am I going to die? And he said that he fell into this great peace where he just let go and he surrendered to everything. He surrendered to all that had happened, to all that ever would happen, to all the injustice that ever occurred to him or anyone around him. And he went into this deep space of stillness for the first time in his life. And he said he heard a voice say in his ear, it's all going to be all right. And it's not only that he believed it, it's that he became it. He became it. And I knew Richard right up until his death. He was a cardiac patient. He knew when I met him that he was dying. He had a very serious heart condition that was inoperable at that point. And still, he moved through the world in this tremendous peace, stillness, acceptance, inner light. What Masio was saying, this looking within to find the answer, to find the stillness, not from out here, but from in here. I called him a couple weeks before he died, and he had just found out that, again, there was nothing to be done. And I said, Richard, how you doing? And he said, same thing you always said. He said, it's all going to be all right. And I said, no, really, how are you doing? And he said, it's all going to be all right. He said, I've been having practice heart attacks lately. And I said, really? What's that? Walk me through that. And he said, well, my heart keeps stopping because, it doesn't work anymore. And it's scary. And it was the first time I'd ever heard him use the word scary. He said, it's scary, but I'm learning how to relax into it because I've had such a beautiful life, said this man whose life had been filled with so much chaos until the day he finally relaxed into it's all going to be all right, stopped drinking, stopped using, and became a leader of others. He said, I've had such a beautiful life. I don't want to die afraid. So I'm learning how to be at peace with what is. Those are the last words he said to me. And a few weeks later, he died. And his son said that when they found him, he was literally sitting on an easy chair with his feet up, with his glasses up on his head and a novel he'd been reading open on his chest, his hands folded, and a smile on his face. Even in that moment, in the last moment, he was accepting of life on life's terms and decided that it was all going to be all right. I took that with me, and I have carried that, and I'm living into that the same way that Richard did. And I'm learning how to become that, not just to believe it, but to become that in every circumstance in my life, to find the great vast silence that is within me, even in the chaos outside. And when I answer those who questions, who can I serve? And when I answer that how question, how can I show up? The answer is always, it's all going to be all right, if the answer to both of those things is that I show up as love. If I want to be love in the room, no matter what room I am in, and if I am in an empty room and I'm the only one in it, then I will show up as love for myself, holding my own self, putting my arms around me, stroking me very softly and saying, it's all going to be all right, until I believe it enough that I can actually take that conviction out into the world and share it with others. That is not just what I want to be, it is who I want to be. And it also seems to be the mission of this entire beautiful institution. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here tonight. I encourage all of you to open up your hearts and your wallets to ask how you can be in the world and who you can be in the world for, rather than asking the deadly question of why that only makes us more anxious and more upset, instead of the how and the who that connect us intricately, tenderly, with exquisite tenderness to one another forever. Thank you so much for letting me be part of your night.
So, Liz, I have to start with a chuckle. I interview people for a living, and I've never had anyone take the word why off the table at the beginning, but I'm about to ask a set of questions. So, challenge accepted. I will avoid the word why during this conversation.
We can try it. But it usually ends up getting stuck.
I'm going to give it a shot. I was really struck. So, in a fireside chat like this, I usually prepare one pretty serious question in advance and then go based on what I heard. And remarkably, before I heard you, my first question was, you seem to really value showing up. Talk about that. And then, of course, you talked so much just now about showing up. I think that's a hard concept for a lot of people and a hard commitment to make. What brought you to the place of making a commitment to be someone who shows up?
Thank you for seeing me that way. I always think that I should be doing more, but that's the horrible shoulds. I think, first of all, I just want to clarify, this can be a tricky one for women because women do have a tendency to self-negate sometimes in service to everybody else. And so I try to show up not as a martyr, but as a whole human being. And in order to show up as a whole human being, I have a whole raft of rituals that I have to do in my life to keep myself stabilized, so that when I show up, I'm not showing up, what do they say? So I can deliver the message, not the mess. There's a lot I have to do. I'm not saying this lightly, and especially in light of tonight's event. I quite literally wake up mentally ill almost every day. Like I really do. I wake up with great fear and great anxiety. I wake up oftentimes like I've been shot out of a cannon, like, oh my God, another day in Earth School. How are we going to do this? And I wake up, I go to bed really early and I wake up really early because it takes me a couple hours of spiritual practices to get myself stabilized enough that I can be here. And then once I'm here, then all I want to do is be of service to other people. But I've got to get myself stabilized first. It's the old, put your own oxygen mask on before you do. And then as far as showing up, it's what I owe. So many people have shown up for me over the course of my life. I have to. It keeps the circle of generosity going. I wouldn't be here. I literally wouldn't be alive if people hadn't shown up for me. So it's the least I can do.
Is there a healing power to being of service? You talked about women's tendency to self-abnegate. And I lost your video there for a second, just so you know. Women's
Am I back?
Yeah, you are back.
Great.
Women's tendency to self-abnegate, which one could see being of service as doing, and yet I know that I believe there is a profound power in being of service. How did you come to that? And is there a healing power there in being of service to others?
There is, and it's a tricky thing, and it's a subtle line, what you just mentioned. What I look for is oftentimes when I erased myself in order to be of service to others, what I now know about that is I was actually trying to get something out of it. So there's a weird selfishness at the bottom of that self-abnegation. I was trying to be loved. I was trying to cling. I was trying to serve somebody, oftentimes in relationship, overserve them so that they would not leave me. I was trying to hold on to somebody by overgiving. Or I was trying to get validation or be seen as a certain way in the world. So I'm careful about that now, and I'm careful to not give in order to get, because there's a tremendous service in just giving for the sake of giving. And one of the best things about it is that it takes me out of my thinking about myself. And true humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. And the world doesn't benefit when I sit around thinking about myself all day. So it really actually is a public service, and it's also a service to me. It just and it expands. It takes me out of my whatever self-pity I might be in, and it's also, honestly, I think it's very simply what we're here for at the very most basic level.
Do you love yourself? Have you learned?
I think I do. I really do, because that's also a public service. When I was at my most self-hating, I was also at my most needy. And because of what I was constantly doing was looking for other people to take care of me and to provide for me and to make me feel better. And that meant that I was a user. I was a user of anybody who I could get anything from to make me feel better. There's a tremendous narcissism in depression that we don't talk about a lot, because it seems like a mean way to say it. But when I was at my most depressed and my most anxious, I was literally the only thing I could think about. So learning how to befriend my mind, which I think of as the greatest accomplishment of my life and an ongoing experiment, learning how to be a very good friend to the circus car of madness that is happening up in here, learning how to self-care so that I can stabilize and regulate myself enough so that I have something left over, and I can then share, has been, this is why I think mental health care is so important, because it's not just about taking care of the individual. It's about making an individual who can then be a responsible member of society, who can then show up for their family, who can then be of service to others. So it's a mental health care is a very good community investment.
You mentioned just there self-care. I noticed you mentioned it during your remarks as well. When I was on faculty at the School of Social Work at Boston College, we really tried to teach our clinicians in training self-care. And for a lot of people outside of that space, it's a difficult concept, really. I experienced Eat, Pray, Love as an epic journey in self-care. And I recognize that may not be how you wrote it, but it was how I experienced it as a book. And I wonder, how do you help women give themselves permission to authentically engage in self-care?
I like to think of myself as a giant walking permission slip. I spend a lot of time giving women permission to do all sorts of things. I've given a lot of women permission to get divorced. I've given a lot of women permission to travel by themselves. I've given a lot of women permission to create things that they didn't think that they were allowed to create, to write memoirs. I mean, if I've done nothing else in the world, I hope that I have given many women permission to do things. It's hard with the self-care piece because it often wasn't modeled. Usually what was modeled for us, certainly in the family where I grew up, is that the purpose of a woman, the literal purpose of a woman, is to deplete herself in service of others until she is dried out and destroyed, and to never complain. My mother grew up on a farm in Depression-era Minnesota, post-Depression era Minnesota, where children in general were farmhands, but children in particular were servants from the minute that they could walk. They were meant to be put to work, and for people like that, you know, growing up with somebody like that who had never been told that she was even allowed to have a self, you know, and then came out of that and saw what a 1950s housewife was supposed to be and tried to be that. It's very difficult to convince a person like that that personhood is even allowed to them. So it's a long process, but usually the tricky way I get around it is by sort of saying what I said before, which is you'll be better at serving others if you can take care of yourself a little bit. And somehow that makes people think that they might deserve to practice even the slightest modicum of self-care.
So I was embarrassed in listening to you just now when you said, imagine going through the world relaxed. My first reaction, before I could even process it, right? My first reaction was, no, I don't even want to imagine that, because the amount that I would have to let go of in order to do that sounds exhausting. And then I was kind of embarrassed, especially after you talked about Richard. But it sounds exhausting to let go of what one would have to let go of to truly be relaxed.
I think maybe what I found was what I was holding on to was more exhausting. And a friend of mine she said she had this realization one day. She said, I finally got all my ducks in a row, and then I realized they weren't even my ducks. You know, just trying to herd chickens constantly, and trying to, a lot of my energy over the years went into trying to fix things that were unfixable, and oftentimes trying to change other people who were unchangeable. That took up a whole lot of my energy. I'll just put it to you this way. If you think about the most difficult thing that you're facing in your life right now, if you were to show up tomorrow and not one bit of it had changed, so all of you can do this little exercise. So imagine, you know, the divorce is still happening. The family member who has addiction still has addiction. The bankruptcy is still occurring. The unemployment is still there. The civil rights battle that you're focusing on is still raging. You know, whatever the activism is that you're in is still nothing. The world is the same. You wake up tomorrow and the world is exactly the same. And you're going in and you want to be of service. Do you think you would have more or less power if you walked into that exact same situation, but you were at ease? The martial arts artists know that the most relaxed person in the fight is the one who always wins. Hunters know, if you study trackers in Africa, as my friend Martha Beck has done, they're very relaxed. You know, the relaxed state where your brain waves are steady and flowing, where your breath is moving freely, actually gives you the capacity to see almost 360 degrees the landscape in front of you. You can walk into, I've been in situations recently because of all the meditation that I've been practicing, where I can walk into a conflict and I can actually see, because I'm relatively at ease, I can see everyone's angle. I can see everyone's hustle. I can see where there's no point in even arguing this case because it's not going to go anywhere. I can see where there's a little bit of opening here. It makes me much more effective in the world to be relaxed. It makes me somebody who can actually help people better and somebody who can solve problems better. So it does, in a weird way, make you more equipped for life on Earth, but it takes some doing. It takes some work to get there. It's not a one-day affair. It's, as I said, learning how, but going back to the how question, learning how to be relaxed in the world is the question that I live in every day of my life.
We have maybe a minute, two at the most left before we have to say goodnight. And I don't want people to miss the chance to hear you talk about creativity. So using a how question, how can people in the audience tonight, people watching tonight, take a first or next step towards really finding their own creativity?
Through relaxing into acceptance of the fact that fear is always going to be with you as your companion whenever you try to do anything creative. And fear is usually the thing that stops people from doing anything creative. But fear is hardwired in us. It's a deep evolutionary survival skill that is hardwired into you to tell you to not do anything new, different, or unusual because it might kill you. That is the job. And the job of fear is to shut you down whenever you attempt to do anything new, different, or original because it might kill you. And that is fear's job. And if you can accept that that is fear's job, that creativity's job is to constantly do things that are new and different and interesting and unusual with uncertain outcome, then you can understand that creativity is like brain 2.0. It's like the next level of evolution. We haven't erased fear, but it's next to it. And I always just say very gently to my fear, I see you, I love you, you're doing a great job protecting me. I appreciate you telling me that I'm gonna die if I try this thing, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Because I'm only here for a short while and I would rather have a more interesting life.
And with that, I want to thank you, Elizabeth Gilbert. And we're just going to take a little moment in our minds for everybody who's watching on this Zoom tonight to thank you and give you what is a muted, but I'm guarantee you they're doing it, round of applause for sharing your thoughts, for showing up for your dear friend, Suleika Jawad, and for giving of yourself and being a service to us and to women and girls' mental health tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I've loved every moment of it. Take care, everybody.
So I want to thank all of you for participating tonight in the Women at the Center kickoff. Your dedication to women and girls' mental health matters. It has been a pleasure to be with you. It was a pleasure to speak with Elizabeth Gilbert. I wish you all a good night and a safe, relaxed, and healthy year.